Hello and welcome back to Mossy Bottom. Yes, I'm still here, and so is Moss the dog, currently attacking a stick in the background. You'll probably hear some sound effects soon. And as you can see behind me, spring has very much sprung here in the west of Ireland. And after an exceptionally wet and long winter, February was a nightmare. It really is wonderful to hear the birds singing and feel firm ground under my feet again. I've even managed to get a bit of a tan, at least by my pasty English standards, this last week or two. It's been glorious, glorious sunshine for most of April here. But then I have been outside almost every waking hour, planting trees and potatoes and building all sorts of things for the new season. Much more on that later in the video. So this video is going to be divided into two parts. In the second half, I'm going to talk about some of the projects that I've got planned for this year, some of which are already underway, and give you a sneak peek at the exciting new things, at least I think they're exciting, that I'm working on right now, and the videos which you can expect later in the year. But firstly, I want to address something which many people have been sending me messages about for the last month or two, and that's how in the wake of the current global situation, which you all know about, it's a great time to be living the kind of life that I'm living. And for those of you who don't know, or are perhaps new to the channel, I live on a little small holding here in County Sligo in the west of Ireland, where I grow most of my own food, certainly all my own fruit and veg, keep animals of all different varieties, including this lunatic, who will definitely feature in the video later, I promise. And I'm working on restoring an old stone cottage and various outbuildings, though pretty slowly, it has to be said. It's surrounded by fields and forestry, and my nearest neighbour is about 1 kilometre in that direction. So I can play my music as loud as I want and no one can hear it, which is great. And yes, a large degree of isolation is pretty much unavoidable. But then being an introvert and someone who naturally copes quite well with the minimal human contact, I sought that life from the very beginning. And I'm not completely alone here, that's for sure, but it's certainly, compared to the average person watching this video, I do lead a pretty isolated life. This is my 4th year living on this little pocket of land and growing all my own food, and I can say with absolute certainty that I've never been happier. But that said, when facing global adversity, as most of us do right now, I feel that it's a time to try and come together and unite, not seek an escape from society. And it's important to say that I made the choice to live here and create this life for very positive reasons. Self-empowerment, working outside all day with my hands, spending more time in nature, being at peace, being with animals. It was my first choice, not my backup life, to turn to when things get tough or go wrong. My life isn't and never has been about being prepared for something which may or may not happen. It's my way of being happy, simply put. And anyone who seeks this kind of life should do so for the same reasons, in my view. It's interesting historically how great adversity tends to unite people in a spirit of cooperation. I grew up hearing stories about World War II from one grandparent who served in the RAF and another who lived through the London Blitz, watching family members die. And one thing that always left me with a lump in the throat hearing those stories was the sense that the tougher things became, the more united and selfless the people were. And I feel kind of like we're seeing that same selflessness now, right around the world, be it praise for health workers, donations to charities, or just adhering to these restrictions and limitations, the like of which we've never seen before. So this really isn't a time for people like me who can't make much of a difference out here in the middle of nowhere. It's a time for those of you living in towns and cities whose choices really might save lives. And on that subject, some of you have also been asking me how I cope with prolonged isolation. Well, I don't cut my hair very often, as you can see, but I guess it is fair to say I'm a bit of an old hand when it comes to isolation. So in the spirit of doing one's bit, I've decided to share my top 3 tips on how to cope with isolation. And I try to avoid the cliches as much as I could, like doing lots of exercise and using FaceTime to talk to your family, which I'm sure you've all seen and heard countless times. So here goes my top 3 slightly less obvious tips on coping with isolation. Number 1, set yourself daily goals. I suppose this one is the most obvious of the 3, but it does make a huge difference, I think, when you go from working for someone else, as I did, to having to manage your own time. One thing I've never lacked here at Mossy Bottom is a sense of purpose, but that's because every day I write a list on my chalkboard in my caravan of jobs that I have to do that day. Of course, I have long-term plans as well, but I break it all down into daily tasks. And I derive a huge amount of satisfaction from wiping them off at the end of that day, or failing to do so, as is quite often the case. I try to be as ambitious as I can, so if I don't manage to complete the jobs, they roll over to the next day and become my mission for tomorrow. So think of things that you can do, be it DIY, gardening, it's a fantastic time for that. Reading, maybe this is time to finally plough through that copy of War and Peace, sat gathering dust on your shelf. Whatever it might be. The key thing though is to have daily goals. So tip number 2 is to make plans for the future and give yourself permission to immerse yourself in those plans, especially at times when you might feel a bit lonely or down. One way I've consistently got through tough times in my past was by sort of dreaming about good things to come. I know it's important to live in the present, otherwise you miss out on stuff. And I'm definitely an advocate of that as a sort of general life philosophy. But when the present gets really tough, as it might be doing for a lot of you right now, the future can provide a helping hand, so to speak, to sort of lift your spirits and get you through. I suppose it comes down to having an imagination. And I know for a lot of us, that's discouraged once you become an adult, but daring to dream is a powerful thing. Even if it's just about that first visit to see family that you haven't seen for weeks or months, what you might eat together, what you'll do together, the small things are just as uplifting, I think. And tip number 3 is something which I do all the time, and I'm convinced most of us do too. Probably everyone who posts videos on YouTube does a lot of this, despite it still having quite a negative stigma, and that's talk to yourself. Now, I'm not suggesting that anyone invents an alter ego for themselves or a split personality or anything like that. I'm sure any psychiatrist watching would strongly advise against that. But talking out problems or planning new things while, I don't know, pulling up weeds or doing the washing or the ironing or whatever it might be, can be a great stress buster. I'm convinced of it. And I'm not the only one saying that. There are actual studies out there, believe it or not, which prove it. So if you think talking to yourself is a sign that you're going mad, think again. Okay, now on to part 2 of this video, which is a kind of sneak peek at upcoming videos that you can expect. So last summer, I began working on the restoration of this 100-year-old stone granary. This isn't the cottage I'm standing in, it's the granary, which is the largest outbuilding on this site. And those of you who follow me on Instagram will probably have seen some photos of me rebuilding the roof, which you can see up there, I think. And it's just about finished now. But I'm pleased to say, along with volunteers who helped me here, I was also able to take lots of video footage and plan on making a series of videos talking you through the whole restoration of the granary. Not just the roof, but the interior as well, which I haven't done yet, but I'm planning on doing that hopefully this summer, touch wood. But the first video on the granary series, as I think it will become, will definitely be later this year. So the next big building project over the winter and spring has been this building behind me. And this is my summer house for volunteers, which I designed and built from scratch, starting in about January, including the stone base, I should say, which was a real labour of love. It took me quite a while to finish. Unfortunately, the building itself is not yet finished, and the reason for that is that for much of the last month, all the builders merchants here in Ireland have been closed, except for emergencies. So it's impossible at the moment to get the supplies that I need to complete it. I've run out of timber, insulation, paint, you name it. And it's very frustrating because I can't begin working on the interior, which will involve all the fun jobs like making beds and a shower room and chairs, a table, stuff that I'm more used to making until the exterior is finished. And I'm about 90% there with the exterior. I've got one wall left to do at the front. But then so far this year, I must say, all my volunteers have had to cancel up to the end of May due to travel restrictions. So it might not be needed for a while yet anyway, which I guess is fortunate because at this point there are no beds for them to sleep in. I'm not going to reveal the front of the summer house yet, but stay tuned for videos revealing everything, as I think you'll be pleased to know that I filmed just about the entire construction process, even back in January when I was making that base in the pouring rain. So this is my brand new combined chicken and rabbit area. I think you can see a rabbit in the background there. I assure you there's lots of chickens out in front of me. And there's a dog as well, who's very much not allowed in here. It's pretty big, 100 square meters, with areas of grass, coppice trees, rocks, mossy holes to hide in, and of course plenty of shade to escape the sun. It's pretty much, I have to say, every chicken and rabbit's dream. I don't think they could want for much more without living wild. And this, which I think you can see behind me, the big blue thing, is an old cattle trailer, which was very generously donated to me by a neighbour who also happens to provide me with farmyard manure every year for my potatoes, which is very well received. So I'm standing inside the trailer right now with an audience of rampaging chickens. And as you can see, it's definitely seen better days, but the steel frame is intact with minimal rust. The base is good. I know that because I had to drag it across the field to get it here. And even the wooden floorboards are thick and free of rot. So I reckon with a little ingenuity and creativity, it will make the perfect chicken coop. And if you're struggling to imagine quite how it's going to work, then stay tuned because I'll be recording the whole conversion and sharing that with you too, which I think will make a brilliant video. I'm really excited about that one. That's hopefully going to be later in the summer. So there you can see the trailer in the background and the new giant chicken and rabbit area, along with one very vigilant dog as usual. But the next big project, however, is going to be right here where I'm standing. This is a kind of flat terrace which a very good friend of mine made last summer for me by creating a kind of rock bank with old rocks that we dug out the soil, sort of leaning up against this soil terrace. And it might not look it, but making this area with no diggers, no machinery, just good old-fashioned elbow grease, took weeks of hauling rocks and digging soil, and it was a huge job. But the reason it had to be elevated like it is because right now I'm at the very bottom of my land, and in the winter it floods terribly here. In fact, it was flooded up until last month. So by raising the soil, the area here will hopefully remain dry for 12 months of the year. And what's it for, I hear you ask? Well, over the winter I was really lucky. I was given a polytunnel, and not just any old polytunnel, but something really special. And my next big project this spring is going to be to try and put it together. In fact, pretty much as soon as I've got this video published, I'm planning on making a start, probably first thing tomorrow morning. I can't wait for that. Sweet potatoes, peppers, aubergine, butternut squash, here I come. Pig, 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 pig. Good pigs. Finally, if you watched my last video about volunteers, you'll have spotted two cooney pigs. And here they are trying to steal my phone out of my pocket. Very effectively, I should say. But the next video that I publish after this one is going to be all about pigs, these pigs in particular. Answering basic piggy questions about housing and the enclosure that I have them in here. How much food do they need? Do they escape, as people often think? Are they expensive to keep? As well as sort of breed-related questions about coonies. There are quite a few myths out there, I think, which I just haven't found to be true, and some things that they don't tell you, which I wish they had. And I'll be sharing all of that pig-related stuff with you on my next video, and lots more clips of this lady here. So, yeah, I hope you look forward to that, because it's going to be a good one, and difficult to film, I should think. But for now, as the midges come out, that's the one drawback with summers here. That's just about it from me. It's going to be a really exciting season with lots of fun projects to come, lots of progress towards self-sufficiency. In fact, I've got ducklings hatching right now as I sit here recording this. Look out on Instagram for pictures if you're interested. I know these videos aren't as frequent as some of you would like, but that really is just because life gets in the way sometimes. And I'm out doing stuff 7 days a week here. I don't take days off. I usually work from dawn till dusk, so it's just a case of fitting it all in, really. But believe me, the videos and YouTube in general is just as important to me as it ever has been. And there'll be a lot more good stuff to come, so stay tuned. Finally, stay safe, keep busy, keep dreaming, and don't stop talking to yourself. Bye for now.